Welcome to the video lecture series of the subject name Web Designing, subject code KC is 052 according to the KQTU curriculum of our third year Computer Science and Engineering Department. It is the third topic of the Unit 1 and the topic name is Domains and Hosting. So once we have created the sitemap, once we have created on drafting all the coding of the website, now next topic or the next task is to host a website so that it can be available publicly throughout the internet, because always you want to get the number of users from throughout the world. So now it is a time to upload your website over the internet, so the number of users can access your website throughout the or any corner of the world. Now let's talk about the domain name and the hosting. So once we have created the coding part, once we have finished the coding part of your website, now it is the part or the task to host your website. So there is the two terms. The first term is domain name. So the first term is domain name, and another one is your web hosting. So domain name is actually the internet address. So it is the address of your website, and it is nothing. It is the addresses in most of the time you haven't seen, like for the Google, the address is google.com, www.google.com. Similarly for the other one, like for the Facebook, it is the addresses. So these are the string, and these are directly relative or connected with some IP addresses. So IPv4 addresses. Right. So these are the actual internet address. So these are the internet addresses, and these are required. And to type these addresses, where we need to type these addresses, so where we need to type these address is, so we need a software, and the software is your web browser. So you can use any kind of web browser, like we have a list of Google Chrome, or we have a Firefox, we have Apple Safari, right? So even we have an Internet Explorer also. These are actually the softwares. So there is in the software we have I'm just creating one web browser here. So on the top of this you can see this is the URL. So you can write your URL. So it is Uniform Resource Locator. Uniform Resource Locator. So it is the address where actually your information is keeping. So this is an IP address, and most of the time, because it is not feasible by the human being to recall or to maintain the memory of all the string, all the IP addresses. So for simplicity, in terms of the computer science, we use these strings. So it is very simple, the google.com, and most of the pupils know the google.com, but we cannot remember the IP addresses of the google.com. We always, so there is an indirect protocol that is called the domain name system, that is the DNS. So I'm writing here domain name system. The working or the functionality or responsibility of the domain name system is to, so once you type the string on the URL bar, so immediately it will call a particular protocol, that is the domain name system, indirectly, and it will send the request to the directory, and there the directory will return the IP addresses. So this IP addresses is useful for creating your IP packet. So it will come up with the IPv4 address. You can access your addresses from, like, so if I want to access the address, so I can, like, so ns, there is a command ns lookup, and if I write ns.google.com, so I will get the some address. Just wait for the few minutes here. We got this as 216.258. Another one is, like, I can get it. So I'm just checking it whether I'm getting the similar address from this command. So this is actually it is an IPv6 address. You can use this IPv6 address also. So if your country is using the IPv6 packet, so you need to maintain the to make a complete packet, you need to use this IPv6 packet also, right? So once you get the IPv4 addresses, so it's mean the domain name is the actual address or the internet address which belongs to your website, right? Now this is the actual, this is only the relative addresses. Now the another one is the hosting, because to keep any file or to keep any kinds of data like your audio, video, graphics, we need some memory. So where we need to keep my packet, where we need to keep my documents like my files, my videos, and all the and the pictures, we need some web hosting or we need some servers. So the web hosting is a place where all the files of your website live. It's mean this is the actual storage where my files and where my documents are keeping. So in that case, it is like the home of your website where it actually lives. So it means it is actually the storage. So in that case, might be the domain name and the hosting. So domain name is nothing, it is just an IP addresses, and the hosting is actually the actual storage. So it is the server. So web hosting is an actual server, and this domain name is used to bind the location with this server, right? So it's mean that suppose I'm here as a client and I'm running the Google Chrome here. Once I sends the request, first it sends a request to the DNS domain name system. Let's suppose I am accessing the google.com. So in that case, I'm just typing the address here, www.google.com on over the web browser. So it immediately indirectly it calls the domain name system. It will be come back with some IP addresses. So it will be come back with an IP address, or sometime it may come with the IPv6 address. So it's come with the come back with an IPv4 addresses, which is actually the address which is related to this string www.google.com, because in computer science every machine is only recognized by these IPv4 addresses, right? So in that case, now once you get the IPv4 address, now the next is you will send your request to these servers. So it's mean I'm just sending my request. So I'm sending the request here. Suppose I should need. So I'm sending the request. I'm sending the request. So once I get the request, once I send the request to these address, so these address is related to the actual memory location of my file. So immediately the first file that in most of the time it might be a default.html, it might be your index.html, or if you are using any server side scripting, it might be the JSP, ASP, or any kind of different like PHP also. So in that scenario, once it gets the request, it sends a response in the form of HTML response. So to view the HTML file as a response on the client machine, we need a web browser. So to visualize the HTML response which is received from the server, we need a web browser that must be installed on the client machine. So this is actually the process of how we are sending the request and how we retrieve the HTML response from the server. So in that scenario, what we have learned, that is the domain name and the hosting. So domain name is actual string or the IP address, which is the internet address, which is relative or which is connected with the actual location where the files are storing. So in that case, the server is a web hosting and is the place where all the files of your website live. It is like the home of your website where it is actually lives. So it means it is a storage. So, but there must be, because we cannot access all the files directly. We need some functionality or some methods which can find. So it gets your request. Let's suppose I'm sending the request for google.com front page. So there must be one authority who will read the request, and based on the request it will generate the HTML responses. So you can see it's been this authority is the server. So we need to install the servers on the one of the machine, and where I can put my files or my pictures or my animations or YouTube videos also. And once I get the request, the server needs to execute these requests, and then in response they need to generate some HTML responses. So for understanding the very basic example of the gmail.com, so always we type on the Google URL bar, just we most of the time we just type google.gmail.com. So in that case the gmail.com is so I'm sending the request to the gmail.com server. So gmail.com server will respond with the first page, which is the login, which comes with the login and the password text fields. Once I fill these, if it is authenticated, the server will respond with the next page, which containing most of the time it containing the 50 new emails. So it's mean it is a completely an HTML responses. So there are some of the now once we have too much talk about the proper the domains and web hosting. Now let's talk about some of the most commonly or the popular domains. So the most common one is the commercial one, that is the .com. So if any string of any URL string is ended with .com, it means it is belong to the commercial purposes. So if it is .net, if it is ended with the .net, it means it is belongs to the network. And for the most of the organization they use mostly the .org, and for for companies and for normal purpose you can use the .co, and for .us it belong to the US country. For .in it is mostly popular in India, and if any particular domain is ended with .in, it's this website is mostly belongs to .in. So the domains are normally it is categorized based on the commercial purpose, based on the network, based on the organization. Even most of the time it is based on .edu only. So we can fragment these domains based on their categories. If even we can further nested these domains, or further we can fragmented these domains. So let's say for the example you can see like this .edu.in. So it's mean, so it is on the top it is the EIN. Now it is fragmented into .edu. So even further you can fragment it like this. So let's suppose one of the university name, that is like it is IIT. So IIT Delhi, let's suppose it is IIT Delhi. So the string would be the IIT Div Delhi. So I'm just using this to make it more clear. So it should be IIT Delhi.edu.in, right? So this would be a iitd.edu.in. So it's mean it is belongs to the India, and this under the India it is belongs to the edu category. So even you can further use some of the more main. Let's suppose it is belongs to the academia. Let's suppose it is belongs to the companies or the commercial purposes. Let's suppose it is belongs to the government on government.in. Like let's based on this government.in. In some of the cases we use the .ac.in. So you can see many of the university websites are ended with .ac.in. So it means it belongs to India, and furtherly it is fragmented as based on the academy, or based on the educational purpose, or based on the commercial, or based on the government purposes. So one of the most popular domains to service provider who is providing these kinds of domains where you can search the availability of these domains is go.daty.com. Once you have decided the domains, now the next task is popular web hosting, because it is so selection of the hosting machine is totally depend on shared hosting, dedicated hosting, VPS, virtual private systems. For managed hosting, server number of cores, different RAM, CDNs, CSL certificate. These are the attribute which is belongs to give some more security, to give some highest weightage to your machine. So these are some web